Waitress had only $3 on New Year's Eve date, but the single dad next table stepped in and changed everything. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Maya Torres sat on her bed on New Year's Eve at 6:30 in the evening, staring at her phone screen showing her bank account balance of exactly $3.47. And she wanted to cry because she had a first date in 1 hour at Bella Vista, which was the upscale Italian restaurant where she literally worked as a waitress. And her date, Kevin, had specifically chosen that place saying, "Don't worry, it's my treat," which she'd assumed meant he was paying for everything. She'd just paid her rent 2 days ago, which took $1,200, plus utilities and her car insurance, and the minimum payment on the credit card she'd maxed out last month when her car needed emergency brake repairs. And now she had $3.47 to last her until payday on January 2nd. Maya looked at herself in the mirror wearing the one nice dress she owned and thought about texting Kevin to cancel or suggest somewhere cheaper. But her coworker and best friend Rosa had set this up and had been begging Maya to go on a date for 6 months, saying, "You've been alone for 2 years. You deserve to have some fun." She grabbed her purse with the $3 in it and drove to Bella Vista, hoping that Kevin really did mean he was paying, because if not, she was about to be humiliated in front of every single person she worked with. Across town, James Sullivan, who everyone called Jamie, was buckling his 7-year-old daughter Brooke into the car saying, "I know it's New Year's Eve, but we're still doing our Friday tradition, right? You still want Italian?" And Brooke said, "Yes, I want to see Miss Maya. She's my favorite. She always remembers that I like extra cheese on my pasta." Jamie smiled because they'd been going to Bella Vista every Friday for the past 2 years, and Maya Torres had been their waitress probably 90% of those times. And she was so good with Brooke and so genuinely kind that Jamie always left her a 50% tip because he could tell she was struggling, even though she never complained. Jamie was a construction foreman who owned a small crew, and his wife Lisa had died from cancer 3 years ago, leaving him to raise Brooke alone. And their Friday dinners at Bella Vista had become this sacred tradition that made them both feel normal. When they walked into the restaurant at 7:15, Brooke immediately looked around and said, "Where's Miss Maya? I want her to be our waitress." And Jamie said, "Honey, it's her night off. She's not working tonight." And that's when he saw Maya sitting at the bar looking nervous in a dress he'd never seen her wear. And Brooke said, "There she is. She looks like a princess. Why is she all fancy?" They got seated at a table near the bar, and Jamie couldn't help watching Maya, who looked beautiful, but also uncomfortable, checking her phone every few minutes and glancing toward the door with growing anxiety. And at 7:30, a guy in an expensive suit finally walked in and went straight to Maya without apologizing for being 30 minutes late. Jamie could tell immediately this guy was a tool based on the way he didn't pull out Maya's chair and started talking about himself before she'd even gotten a word in. And unfortunately, their table was close enough that Jamie could hear bits and pieces of the conversation, including the guy, Kevin, saying, "So you're a waitress? That's cute. Is this like a temporary thing, or are you trying to do something real with your life?" Maya's voice was quiet when she said, "I've worked here for 2 years. I actually really like it." And Kevin laughed this condescending laugh and said, "Don't you want to do something real with your life? More though, like something that requires an actual degree." Jamie's jaw clenched because he could see Maya's face fall, and Brooke whispered, "Daddy, why is that man being mean to Miss Maya?" And Jamie said, "I don't know, sweetheart, but it's not okay." They watched the date continue getting worse, Kevin ordering the most expensive wine without asking Maya what she wanted, talking over her every time she tried to speak, checking his phone constantly, and Jamie was getting more and more angry on Maya's behalf. The worst part came when the check arrived and Kevin looked at it and said loud enough that half the restaurant could hear, "So we're splitting this, right? It's called equality? Welcome to the modern world?" Maya's face went completely white, and she opened her purse with shaking hands, and Jamie watched her count out money, and then her face just crumbled. She said, "I thought you said this was your treat. I have $3. I just paid my rent yesterday. All my cards are maxed or empty. I don't have anything until payday." Kevin's voice got even louder, and he said, "You came on a date with $3? What kind of person does that? This is absolutely embarrassing. Did you expect me to pay for everything like we're in the 1950s? He threw $100 bill on the table and said, "That's my half. You figure out the rest." And he literally just walked out of the restaurant, leaving Maya sitting there with tears streaming down her face. The entire restaurant had gone silent watching this scene unfold. And Maya worked here, everyone knew her, and Jamie could see her dying inside from the humiliation. Brooke was tugging on Jamie's sleeve saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Miss Maya is crying. That man made her cry. We have to help her." And Jamie was already standing up because there was no way he was sitting there watching this woman who'd been nothing but kind to him and his daughter get treated like garbage. He walked over to Maya's table and said her name gently. And when she looked up and saw him and Brooke standing there, she said, "Mr. Sullivan, I'm so sorry you had to see that. I'm so embarrassed. I work here and everyone just watched me get dumped because I'm broke." Jamie sat down across from her without asking and pulled out his wallet and put $100 bill on the table and said, "This covers your half of the bill, and that guy's an asshole. You deserve so much better than that." Maya tried to push the money back, saying, "I can't take your money. You don't have to do this." But Jamie said, "Maya, you've been serving me and Brooke every Friday for 2 years. You've never once made us feel like anything less than valued customers. That guy just humiliated you for being broke. And I've been broke. It's not shameful. It's just life." Brooke climbed into the chair next to Maya and said, "Don't cry, Miss Maya. That man was really mean and stupid. You're the nicest person ever." And Maya laughed through her tears and hugged Brooke. Jamie said, "Can I ask you something? Did you actually eat dinner or were you too nervous?" And Maya said, "I didn't order anything. I was too anxious." And Jamie said, "Then join us. We haven't ordered yet. Please have dinner with us. I'm not taking no for an answer. It's New Year's Eve and nobody should be alone and upset." Maya looked between Jamie and Brooke and said, "Why are you being so nice to me? You don't owe me anything." And Jamie said, "Because 3 years ago when my wife died, someone helped me when I needed it most, and I promised myself I'd pay that forward whenever I could. So please, just have dinner with us." They moved to Jamie's table and ordered food, and Maya finally relaxed and started smiling. And Brooke talked nonstop about school and her friends and how she was going to stay up until midnight for the first time ever. The conversation flowed easily, and Jamie found himself watching Maya laugh at Brooke's stories. And he realized he was attracted to her in a way he hadn't been attracted to anyone since Lisa died. When midnight approached, they went outside to watch the fireworks, and Brooke said with zero filter, "Are you going to kiss Daddy at midnight, Miss Maya? That's what people do on New Year's." And both adults laughed and turned red. And Jamie said, "How about I just ask if I can take you to coffee sometime? Like an actual date where I pay and nobody humiliates you?" Maya smiled and said, "I'd really like that, Mr. Sullivan." And Jamie said, "Call me Jamie. Mr. Sullivan makes me feel old." And they watched the fireworks together, thinking that maybe the worst date of Maya's life had just turned into the beginning of something incredible. Jamie and Maya went on their first official coffee date 3 days after New Year's Eve, and they sat in a corner booth at a local cafe for 4 straight hours, talking about everything from their childhoods to their biggest fears to what they wanted their lives to look like in 5 years. Maya told him about her controlling ex-boyfriend who'd slowly isolated her from all her friends over 3 years, and how when she finally got the courage to leave him, her parents had actually sided with him, saying she was throwing away a good man. And she'd moved to Chicago with $800 in her pocket and a car that was already falling apart. She said, "I've been building my life from absolutely nothing for 2 years now. And yeah, I'm still basically broke and working doubles just to survive. But I'm really proud of what I've done because I did it completely alone." And Jamie reached across the table and took her hand and said, "You should be proud. What you've accomplished takes serious guts. Most people would have given up or gone crawling back. But you're out here making it work even when it's impossibly hard." He told her about Lisa dying from ovarian cancer 3 years ago after a brutal 18-month fight, and how he'd been raising Brooke alone while trying to run his construction business and not completely fall apart. Jamie said, "Those Friday dinners at Bella Vista became our lifeline. It was the one normal thing we had when everything else felt broken, and you were always so genuinely kind to Brooke. You have no idea how much that mattered to me watching someone treat my kid with real warmth instead of pity." Maya's eyes got wet and she said, I always loved when you two came in. Brooke lights up the whole room, and you're such a good dad. I could see how much you loved her in every interaction. They started dating officially in January, and everything felt easy and natural in a way neither of them had experienced before. They'd meet for coffee between Maya's double shifts and talk for hours. Jamie would bring Brooke to Bella Vista every Friday, and Maya would join them at their table after her shift ended, still in her work uniform. Brooke was absolutely over the moon that her dad was dating her favorite waitress, and by February, Maya was spending entire weekends at Jamie's house helping Brooke with art projects and cooking family dinners, and feeling like maybe she'd finally found a place where she belonged. Everything fell apart in April when Maya's car made a horrible grinding noise in the Bella Vista parking lot and died completely, and the mechanic she had it towed to said the transmission was shot and it would cost $800 to fix. Maya sat in that parking lot and cried because she didn't have $800. She barely had $80, and without a car she couldn't get to work, which meant she'd lose the income she desperately needed to survive. Jamie offered immediately to pay for the repairs, and Maya said, "I can't let you do that. I can't be that girl who takes money from her boyfriend. I need to be able to handle my own problems." And Jamie said, "How are you going to handle it if you can't physically get to work?" And Maya said, "I'll figure it out. I always figure it out. I'll take the bus and pick up extra shifts and save up the money." She ended up taking two different buses to get to work, which added 90 minutes to her commute each way. And she was pulling doubles almost every day to try to save money faster, which meant she was working 14-hour shifts and barely sleeping. Jamie watched her run herself into the ground and felt completely helpless. And one night in early May, she was at his house and fell asleep mid-sentence at 8:30 because she was so exhausted her body just shut down. Jamie carried her to the guest room, and she didn't even wake up, and Brooke said, "Daddy, is Maya okay? She looks really tired all the time, like she's sick." And Jamie said, "She's working too hard, baby. She's trying to save money for her car, and she won't let me help her." The breaking point came in mid-May when Maya caught the flu from being so run down and exhausted, and she had to call out sick for an entire week, which meant she lost close to $500 in wages and tips that she desperately needed. Her rent was due June 1st, and when she did the math, she was $300 short, and she tried to negotiate with her landlord, but he reminded her she'd been late twice before and had already received a final warning. And by June 5th, there was a 3-day eviction notice on her apartment door. Maya was having a full panic attack trying to figure out if she could get a payday loan or pawn something when Jamie showed up at her apartment to check on her and saw the bright orange eviction notice taped to her door. He said, "Maya, why didn't you tell me you were this far behind on rent? I could have helped you. I would have helped you in a heartbeat." And Maya said, "Because I don't want your help. I need to be able to take care of myself. I can't depend on someone else." But Jamie had already pulled out his phone and found the landlord's payment portal information from the eviction notice and paid her entire rent balance. Maya found out the next morning when her landlord called to confirm receipt of payment, and she drove straight to Jamie's house, absolutely furious, and said, "You paid my rent behind my back after I specifically told you I didn't want your help. How could you just completely ignore what I said?" Jamie said, "You were about to be evicted and homeless. I wasn't going to stand by and watch that happen when I had the ability to stop it." And Maya said, "That wasn't your decision to make. I've been taking care of myself for 2 years. I can't just start depending on you. What happens when you leave and I'm back at square one with nothing?" Jamie felt like she'd physically hit him and said, "When I leave, you actually think I'm just going to abandon you?" And Maya's voice was shaking when she said, "Everyone leaves eventually, Jamie. My ex left. My parents chose his side over mine. Lisa died and you lost her even though you loved her. People don't stay, and I can't build my entire life on someone who might disappear tomorrow." Jamie said, "So you're pushing me away first. That's your strategy. You're so terrified of being hurt that you'd rather be alone." And Maya said, "I'm protecting myself. I've worked too hard to rebuild my independence from nothing to lose it all over again by depending on someone." And Jamie said, "Accepting help when you need it doesn't make you weak, Maya. It makes you human. But if you want to do everything alone for the rest of your life, then fine. I won't stand in your way." Maya walked out, and they didn't speak for 2 solid weeks. And every single day, Brooke would ask, "Where's Maya? Why doesn't she come over anymore? Did you guys have a fight?" And Jamie would say, "Yeah, sweetheart, we had a fight." And Brooke would say, with perfect 7-year-old logic, "Then you should apologize. That's what you always tell me to do when I fight with my friends at school." Maya was absolutely miserable at work, going through the motions like a robot. And her coworker Rosa finally cornered her in the kitchen and said, "You're sabotaging the best thing that's ever happened to you because you're scared. That man loves you. He paid your rent because you were sick and broke. That's not charity. That's what people do when they love each other." Tony, the restaurant owner, overheard the conversation and pulled Maya into his office and said, "I've watched you work your ass off here for 2 years. You're one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. But being strong doesn't mean being alone. Sometimes it means being brave enough to let someone help carry the weight." Father's Day weekend. Jamie took Brooke to the cemetery to visit Lisa's grave, like he did every major holiday, and they stood there with fresh flowers while Jamie talked to the headstone saying, "I met someone, Liz, someone who actually reminds me of you. She's stubborn and proud and so determined to do everything herself that she's literally pushing me away." He said, "She's terrified I'm going to leave her, and I don't know how to prove that I'm not going anywhere. I don't know how to reach her." And a voice behind him said, "You could start by not giving up on her even when she's being a complete idiot about everything." Jamie turned around and saw Maya standing there holding a bouquet of white roses, and she walked over and placed them gently on Lisa's grave and said, "I hope it's okay that I'm here. Rosa told me where to find you." And then she knelt down next to the headstone and said, "Hi, Lisa. I'm Maya. I'm sorry we're meeting like this. Your husband is incredible, and your daughter is the sweetest kid I've ever met. And I'm really sorry I've been so stupid and scared." Jamie pulled Maya to her feet and said, "You're not stupid. You're protecting yourself. I understand that." And Maya said, "But I'm protecting myself right out of the best thing that's happened to me in 2 years. I'm so scared of losing you that I'm pushing you away before you can leave. And Lisa, I promise I'll take care of them if you let me." Jamie kissed her right there in the cemetery, and Brooke ran over and hugged both of them, saying, "Does this mean Maya's coming back? Because I really, really missed her." And they both laughed through their tears and said, yes, she was coming back for good. After they made up at Lisa's grave on Memorial Day, Maya moved forward with their relationship, but it was still incredibly hard for her to accept help without feeling like she was losing her independence. And Jamie understood that, so he let her pay him back for the rent money in small $50 installments every month, even though he would have been totally fine just letting it go. She needed to feel like an equal partner, not a charity case, and watching her work so hard to maintain her dignity while also learning to let him in was one of the most beautiful things Jamie had ever witnessed. By July, Maya had finally saved enough to get her car fixed, and she was back to driving herself to work instead of taking 2 buses. And she cried actual tears of relief when the mechanic handed her the keys and said the transmission was good as new. In August, something incredible happened. Tony, the restaurant owner, called Maya into his office and said, "I'm promoting you to shift supervisor. It comes with a $3 an hour raise, and you'll be managing the weekend crew. You've earned this." And Maya had to sit down because $3 an hour didn't sound like much. But when you'd been surviving on scraps for 2 years, it felt like winning the actual lottery. She drove straight to Jamie's house after her shift and burst through the door saying, "I got promoted. I'm going to be okay financially. Like, actually okay. Not rich, but stable. I can pay my bills without having a panic attack every month." And Jamie picked her up and spun her around and said, "I am so incredibly proud of you. You've worked harder than anyone I know, and you deserve every bit of this." That same month, Jamie's parents drove all the way from Michigan to meet Maya because their son had been talking about her nonstop for 8 months, and they wanted to see who had brought their boy back to life after 3 years of just existing. Maya was terrified to meet them, but Jamie's mom, Barbara, hugged her within 5 minutes of walking in the door and said, "Thank you for loving my son and my granddaughter the way they deserve to be loved. I can see how happy you make them, just by the way they look at you." Jamie's dad, Richard, pulled him aside in the kitchen and said, "Son, she's good people. You can see it in everything she does. Don't let this one get away." And Jamie said, "I'm planning to marry her dad. I'm just waiting for the right moment." September arrived and Maya got a phone call that made her stomach drop straight through the floor. Her mother was on the other end saying, "Your father and I heard through your cousin Jennifer that you're dating someone seriously. We'd like to meet him and make sure he's appropriate." Maya's first instinct was to say absolutely not and hang up. But Jamie encouraged her to give them one chance, saying, "Maybe they've changed. Maybe they regret how they treated you. You won't know unless you try." The dinner was tense from the absolute second Maya's parents walked into the upscale restaurant her father had chosen and saw Jamie sitting there in khakis and a button-down shirt. And her father looked him up and down with barely concealed disgust and said, "So you work in construction? That's very blue-collar. What exactly do you do?" Jamie stayed completely calm and said, "Yes, sir, I own a small crew. We do commercial construction mostly. Office buildings and retail spaces. It's honest work, and I'm really proud of what we've built." Maya's mother, Patricia, said in this condescending tone. Maya was dating a financial analyst before this. Andrew had a master's degree from Northwestern. We all thought they were going to get married and give us grandchildren. Maya's hands were shaking under the table, and she said, "That financial analyst was controlling and emotionally abusive. And when I finally got the courage to leave him, you both picked a side. I moved to Chicago completely alone because you made it clear I wasn't welcome at home anymore." Her father said, "You were being overdramatic as usual. Andrew was a good provider with excellent prospects. You should have worked harder on the relationship instead of throwing it away." And that's when Jamie stood up and said, "I think we're done here. Maya doesn't need people in her life who make her feel worthless. We're leaving." Maya stood up too and looked directly at her parents and said, "If you can't see how incredible and kind and loving Jamie is, then that's your loss, not mine. I'm done trying to earn approval from people who will never give it. Don't contact me again." They walked out of that restaurant and Maya was crying, but she was also laughing this slightly hysterical laugh. And she said, "I have never in my entire life stood up to them like that. I feel like I just climbed a mountain." And Jamie said, "You were absolutely incredible in there. I have never been more proud of anyone in my life." December 31st rolled around, and it had been exactly 1 year since the disastrous date where Maya had $3.47, and Jamie told her he was taking her somewhere special for their anniversary, but he wouldn't tell her where, no matter how much she begged. When they pulled up to Bella Vista, Maya laughed and said, "We're going to the restaurant where I work. This is your big romantic anniversary surprise?" And Jamie said, "Just trust me, okay? This place is important to us. This is where everything started." They walked inside and Tony was waiting by the host stand with the biggest smile on his face. And he personally walked them to the exact same table where Kevin had humiliated Maya 1 year ago. Jamie sat Maya down and took both her hands and said, "Exactly 1 year ago, you sat at this table with $3 in your purse and a man who tried to make you feel worthless for being broke. And Brooke and I were sitting right over there, watching him destroy you in front of everyone." And Maya's eyes were already filling up with tears because she could tell something huge was about to happen. Jamie got down on one knee right there in the middle of the Friday night dinner rush and said, "That night I saw the strongest, most resilient person I'd ever met. Someone who had rebuilt her entire life from absolutely nothing and was still standing even when the world kept trying to knock her down." He said, "I saw someone who was kind and patient with my daughter every single Friday, even when she was exhausted from working double shifts. Someone who had $3 in her wallet and more dignity and grace than that guy had in his entire body. Someone I knew I wanted to know for the rest of my life." Brooke came running out from the kitchen where she'd been hiding, and she was holding a poster board sign decorated with glitter and stickers that said, "Please say yes." And Maya started laughing and crying at the same time. Jamie pulled out a ring box and said, "Maya Torres, will you marry me? Will you be Brooke's mom and my wife? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving to you that accepting love doesn't make you weak, it makes you the bravest person in the room?" Maya was nodding so hard she could barely get words out, and she finally managed to say, "Yes, oh my God, yes, I love you both so much. Yes, I'll marry you." And the entire restaurant erupted in the loudest applause. And Tony brought out a bottle of champagne and said, "On the house for the couple who started with $3 and turned it into everything that matters." They got married that following May in Jamie's parents' backyard in Michigan, with about 50 close friends and family members. And it was simple and beautiful and exactly what they both wanted. White flowers were everywhere and string lights were hanging from all the trees. And there was a small table near the altar that had a framed photo of Lisa and a lit candle because Jamie had insisted that Brooke's first mom be honored and present for this moment. When Maya walked down the aisle, she stopped at Lisa's table and whispered, "Thank you for raising such an incredible daughter and for loving such a wonderful man. I promise I'll take care of them for the rest of my life." Brooke was the flower girl, and she'd practiced her walk down the aisle so many times that she had it absolutely perfect. And during the ceremony, when the officiant asked if anyone had anything to say, Brooke raised her hand and said, "I just want everyone to know that my dad and Maya met because a mean man was horrible to her, and my dad helped her. So always help people when they're sad, because you might end up with a new family." Jamie's vows made every single person cry when he said, "You had $3 and more strength than I've seen in people who have everything. You taught me that accepting help doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. You showed Brooke what it means to fight for yourself and stand up for what you deserve. I promise to always be your safe place to land when the world gets hard." Maya's vows were, "You saw me at my absolute lowest point, and you didn't look away or judge me. You taught me that real love is being brave enough to let someone in, even when you're terrified of being hurt. You and Brooke gave me a family when I thought I'd lost mine forever. I promise to choose you every single day for the rest of my life." 3 years after the wedding, they were a family of four, with Brooke now 11 years old and a baby boy named Lucas, who was 18 months old and getting into absolutely everything. Maya still worked at Bella Vista part-time because she genuinely loved the job and the people, and Tony had made her assistant manager, and Jamie's construction business was thriving, so they were finally comfortable. Not rich, but stable with actual savings and the ability to handle emergencies without complete panic. Every New Year's Eve, they went to Bella Vista for dinner, and Tony always gave them the same table where their story had started. In this particular year, they were sitting there with both kids when Maya noticed a young woman at the bar counting money from her wallet over and over with this look of pure panic on her face. The woman kept checking her phone and wiping her eyes, and Maya nudged Jamie and said, "Look, I think she's going through what I went through." And they both just knew what they needed to do. Maya walked over and sat down next to the woman and said, "Hey, I don't mean to intrude, but you look like you're having a really rough night. Are you okay?" And the woman looked up embarrassed and said, "I'm supposed to be on a date, but I just realized I don't have enough money to cover my half of the bill. If he expects me to pay, I feel so incredibly stupid right now." Maya's heart broke, and she said, "I was sitting at that table over there exactly 4 years ago. With only $3 in my purse, my date humiliated me and walked out, leaving me with the bill in front of everyone. And the man who's now my husband stepped in and helped me when I needed it most." The woman started crying and said, "Why would you help a complete stranger? You don't even know me." And Maya said, "Because someone helped me when I was at my lowest, and that moment changed my entire life. So whatever you're going through right now, you're not alone. Let us help you, please." Jamie came over, and they ended up paying for the woman's entire dinner. And Jamie slipped her $200 and said, "This isn't charity. This is paying forward the kindness someone showed us. Use it however you need to." As they were leaving that night with both kids, Maya turned to Jamie and said, "We just came full circle, didn't we?" And Jamie said, "That's what you do when you've been given a second chance at everything. You make sure someone else gets their chance too." Sometimes the absolute worst moment of your life becomes the foundation for everything beautiful that follows. Maya had $3 on New Year's Eve 4 years ago and thought her world was ending. But a single dad at the table next to her saw worth when she couldn't see it in herself. $3 became three people, became a family built on understanding that accepting help takes courage and offering help is love. And they wouldn't change a single thing about how their story started because that humiliation and that kindness led to everything they'd ever wanted. If you're struggling financially and feel ashamed, listen closely. Your bank account doesn't define your worth. You are valuable and deserving of love exactly as you are. The right person sees your heart, not your wallet. Hit that subscribe button if this story reminded you that the worst dates can lead to the greatest love. That $3 can be enough when you've got the right people beside you. That kindness creates ripples that change lives. Share this with someone who needs to know they're worthy even when the world has beaten them down. Thanks for being here with us. And remember, sometimes the person at the next table is watching and waiting to show you that goodness still exists.